I'm Julia Fisher, and you're listening to The Olive Tree, bringing you news from Israel and the wider Middle East about what God is doing there. Labib Madanat, my guest today, is well qualified to bring us news from the region. Born in Jordan, he spent much of his childhood in Jerusalem, where his father was a pastor. He later studied in Iraq before returning to Jerusalem to take on a job with the Bible Society. All that was many years ago, and today he is advisor for the Bible Society for their work in the Middle East and North Africa. I asked him to describe the situation in Syria. What is life like for Christians who live there?
One thing I can say is I love the church in Syria. There is no church without challenges or problems. Either in the best place in London, a smallest church, you can find some disputes and things and problems. Because we are fallen human beings after all. We are saved by grace, and grace is still at work in our lives. But I love the church in Syria. I think they're doing amazing ministry, and there's so much good is happening there. And what I loved is that the churches, the leaders I spoke to, there is not one hint of bitterness against Muslim neighbors. Even with all of what happened, with all of the Sunni terrorist organizations and the ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the zillion other, and who knows all those names, who suddenly disappeared as if there was vapor. Still, the believers there have a heart of gold, embracing, loving their neighbor. And I love that. And we need to pray more that God will equip the church in Syria with more and more of the love your neighbor.
How are they surviving, though, Labib? Are they having a lot of persecution, a lot of trouble?
No, the problem in Syria is not persecution against the church primarily. The problem in Syria is the places where the Syrian government, surprisingly, is not in control. Those are the places where the former jihadist terrorists are now thugs and gangs and spreading fear and death and name it. And that is the problem facing the country. So the chaotic areas. We have a chaotic area just next to our borders with Jordan, the city of Daraa, where all of the, not the Arab Spring, the Islamic Spring of Syria erupted in 2011 or 12. No, the church actually now has an amazing golden opportunity to minister. Carefully, as in not to be seen as if they use their comfortable political stand, as if like there's an imbalance of power now. The imbalance of power, I believe, should be the imbalance of power of love in reaching their neighbors. But in terms of the government and the church, no, the church is in a good place in Syria.
Can you bring news about the situation regarding the thousands of refugees who have fled to Europe? Many have found their way to the UK.
Yes, even when I was in our family, we have, when we were still living in Reigate, when Caroline was very involved, and we met so many wonderful Syrian families here in the United Kingdom. And I think they're assimilating in the society because there's also quite a large Middle East community. Again, you are talking about Syrian Arabs, predominantly Sunni Muslims here. And so you're talking about almost like the core of Sunni Arab Islam. When you talk about the Levant and Saudi and so on, they are assimilating very well in the UK. They're hardworking people. They're very creative. They have high work ethics and so on. So in this regard, it is excellent that they are here in the UK. But as a church, we are like meek as doves, wise as serpents. And so what will this mean to the UK and to the position of Islam in the UK, respecting everybody's free choice to believe what they want to believe, who they are, freedom of religion, freedom of thought, all of those things that we respect and we uphold and so on. But as a church, and as a church, when I say I'm not saying only the white middle class church in the UK. No, I'm talking about the church, the body of Christ in Syria. I believe still there is a big opportunity to minister Jesus in a very intentional way to those people. I would love to see, even if there is a combined effort by churches, to say, you know what, we have a stewardship as a church. Every refugee that comes to our country is a stewardship. God is bringing those people to our doorsteps, and this is a stewardship. This concerns me a lot still. If the church will say, fine, praise God, wonderful, they came, they are here in our country, they're assimilating well, they're nice people, they're good people, we love the baklava, see there are more doctors of them, they're contributing to good life in the UK, good enough. What is good enough for me as a Christian?
You're suggesting, Labib, that what is on your heart, you're not actually seeing here in the UK. Do you feel that many in the church have closed the door of their hearts to refugees and asylum seekers and failed to see the opportunity and, dare I say, what God is doing in stirring up the nations at this time and bringing different peoples to our shores and Europe generally?
Some churches are doing excellent work. We need to acknowledge God's work in churches and the good report. And I've seen that in some of the churches I've been to. But what I'm saying is, what is good enough? Do we as a church kind of see government initiatives, other humanitarian NGOs and so on? Did we subcontract? Did we hand over the gospel mission to those agencies? And if things are okay, then things are okay. We're happy to contribute, we're happy to give, we're happy to help sometimes, to do a special appeal and so on. But there needs to be a direct interaction between the refugee and the church to taste Jesus. Nothing should come in between. They will taste the goodness of the people of the United Kingdom, okay? They will taste how good they are. They will see how wonderful maybe the government regarding of the politics governments and so on are helping them and so on. They will see how wonderful the NHS is and the amazing work they do. All of this is wonderful and great, and we should support it in the UK. Yes, but it's important that they don't only taste Britain, they need to taste Jesus. And that's what I would like to see happen more and more.
Just to stay with that theme a little longer, Labib, you are Jordanian by background. You lived in Jordan for your early life, and then you moved to Jerusalem where you grew up and married. Your family was born there. You spent many years living in Israel as well.
Yes.
Here you are now living in the UK. You are somebody that has had the privilege of living in a number of different cultures. So maybe you find it easier than many to understand people's mindsets, and perhaps easier to understand what God is doing in the world today. Can you just stay with this a little longer? And can we perhaps ask, what is your biblical perspective on the turbulence that's going on, not just in the Middle East and North Africa, the areas you cover, but generally around the world? How do we understand it as Christians, and how do we embrace what God is doing and not just pull up the drawbridge?
I believe in the goodness of God, but the goodness of God is goodness that wants to see all to come to the truth and be saved. That's the one and ultimate and only goal of God's goodness towards His creation. And so I want to see everything from that prism of the love of God displayed in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, the atoning work of Jesus Christ. Because that's the ultimate thing. He's a father, he's an Abba. He wants his family with him. That human family he created and loved so much. He wants them to be with him and enjoy his goodness forever. This is how I see the world. Now, no wonder the world is in different forms of turbulence. Now, the pandemic that hit the world is like one common thing that hit everyone, right? But underneath that, there are so many other things happening as a result of the fall and being away from God. So I am not someone who would say, God sent this as a punishment to slap humanity in the face and say, then there you see what's happening to you guys, whatever. I'm very careful. I would never, I personally would never say that. I would say that we live in a fallen world, nature, system, and so on. And this is one of the symptoms of this fall, rather than this is punishment from God. I don't say this is punishment from God, not at all. I personally am not in this line. But what that means is it is showing the world how the might that the world has built is so fake, and how much everybody needed to go back to the basic things of what a human being is, created after the image of God. The thing of empathy, love, neighborhood, community, all of those good things that we have seen and we celebrate. And I'm saying that what the pandemic has done, I believe, is created openness, unprecedented openness in people's minds and hearts in the UK and globally to listen deeper, to have to kind of like buried questions to come back to life. And so I'm very hopeful. I like, me, Julia, I like to poke people around and whatever and talk to them and start conversations where it's not very, kind of like you are in the line and everybody is strict and at the passport control and so on. And I say, man, why are we on the airplane so happy and talking to each other and so on? And we come here on the passport line and suddenly everybody is like pieces of stone. So I start poking people around and talking and so on. And you find people, they want community. People are hungry for community. Community is one of the characters of who God is, the Trinity. That's one of the cores of who God is. And that should be also with us as a church. So you referred to closing doors. Oh my goodness. How can we close the doors of our hearts or our churches or our houses for the stranger? This is us being totally against who God is. Turbulence, yes. Hunger for the core basic things, big time. And it's prime time for Jesus.
You've been listening to Labib Madanat, and we'll hear more from him on next week's programme. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please visit our website, olivetreefund.org. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.